Every All Saints' Day the candles glow brighter, yet fewer are real. Behind every plastic saint and store-bought altar lies a forgotten story of faith, beauty, and loss. From the miracle of plastic to the quiet revival of real devotion, this video uncovers how modern times buried the sacred and how a new generation is digging it back up, one candle at a time. Once the air smelled of wax and prayers, now it smells of plastic. There was a time when All Saints' Day filled entire neighborhoods with the scent of smoke, beeswax, and flowers. Candles dripped onto cold stone, children whispered the names of the departed, and mothers left food at graves with trembling hands. Every flame meant something, a heartbeat of remembrance. But as the world marched toward convenience and profit, something sacred began to fade. The change came quietly after the Second World War, when factories that once made bullets began to make toys, ornaments, and idols. The late 1940s and early 1950s were drenched in hope, a modern age rising from ashes. Plastic was the miracle of the century, lightweight, cheap, immortal. And so the sacred joined the assembly line. Saints once carved from marble or olive wood emerged shiny and hollow from steel molds. They were easier to clean, unbreakable, and identical. Faith made efficient. Families bought their first everlasting candles, bulbs glowing red inside clear shells, advertised as safe devotion for modern homes. By the 1960s, the old altars of Europe had begun to shed their dust. Cathedrals glimmered under fluorescent light, incense gave way to air fresheners, and handmade rosaries were replaced by plastic beads sold by the dozen. The same material that molded Barbie dolls and Coca-Cola caps now shaped the Virgin Mary. It was the age of convenience, the same decade that produced disposable cups, fast food, and one-minute prayers. In America, religion became suburbanized. Drive-in masses, televised sermons, and store-bought holiness spread like wildfire. Companies sold plug-in candles with slogans like, "Faith that never burns out." Supermarkets stacked rows of saints beside cereal boxes. Even the sacred could now fit in a shopping cart. In the Philippines and Latin America, markets overflowed, with neon saints molded from the same plastic as children's toys. These statues glowed brighter than wax, but their light carried no warmth. The 1970s and 1980s saw something stranger. Nostalgia became a commodity. The world was getting richer, busier, louder. People missed something. They couldn't name it, but they felt its absence in their bones. They longed for the glow of their grandmother's altar, the uneven flicker of a candle that might blow out at any moment. So the market responded. Companies began selling vintage faith. Crosses came pre-weathered. Statues came hand-aged. Artificial dust was painted on icons to make them feel old again. It was an irony too heavy to ignore. We were buying back what we had thrown away, mistaking imitation for memory. Faith turned into decor and grief into style. The same factories that made cheap saints now made antique ones. Real flowers wilted, fake ones lasted forever, and we began to prefer what never changed. The world forgot that the beauty of ritual came from its fragility. When the Berlin Wall fell and the 1990s opened the gates of globalization, the sacred spread faster than ever, packaged, translated, digitized. Western saints appeared in Japanese gift shops and Eastern incense perfumed Parisian cathedrals. The world seemed smaller, but the soul somehow lonelier. Television evangelists promised salvation through toll-free numbers, while malls sold glow-in-the-dark rosaries next to chewing gum. Religion had entered the age of mass production and mass marketing, an empire of plastic devotion. And yet, even among the bright lights of modernity, there were faint echoes of mourning. Old priests complained that church attendance had become seasonal, that the faithful lit candles only for photographs. Sociologists called it the secular century. But faith never truly dies, it adapts. The new millennium brought with it a reckoning. The same plastic that promised immortality began to choke rivers and oceans. Every November, piles of discarded eternal candles filled landfills. Artificial flowers never decayed, their bright colors clashing with the grey earth of real graves. Environmental reports warned that All Saints and All Souls celebrations now generated more plastic waste annually than several entire countries combined. We had made faith indestructible, and that was the problem. Then came the pandemics, the silent plagues of modernity. The influenza of 1968 had already whispered warnings, but none compared to the global lockdown of 2020. For the first time, in living memory, the cemeteries were empty on All Saints' Day. Candles burned behind screens, digital flames flickering on tablets. Families shared prayers on Zoom, lighting virtual candles that glowed for 24 hours before disappearing. For a world built on convenience, it was poetic justice. Devotion had become digital, and yet, in that isolation, something human resurfaced. People missed touch, scent, presence. They missed what couldn't be downloaded, the heat of wax, the weight of silence. Across continents, small revivals began. In Manila, young families brought back real beeswax candles. In Mexico, artists carved saints from reclaimed wood. In Poland, students learned to make their own incense. In Seoul, the younger generation created eco-altars with biodegradable offerings. It was as if the earth itself had whispered, "Remember what was real." Even celebrities began to romanticize handmade spirituality. Hollywood stars collected vintage crosses. Musicians like Billie Eilish wore rosary beads as both symbol and statement, and artists painted saints again, this time with irony and tenderness. On Instagram, aesthetic altars became trends. Candles, dried flowers, handwritten prayers, digital nostalgia with a pulse. Faith had become fashionable again, but beneath the filters, something genuine was stirring. By the late 2020s, the phrase sustainable spirituality entered everyday vocabulary. Religious groups across the globe launched campaigns to replace plastic offerings with organic ones. In Italy, churches began recycling old candles to reduce waste. In Brazil, parishes encouraged flower composting. In India's coastal regions, Goan families lit coconut oil lamps beside digital tablets, showing distant relatives praying from abroad. Technology and tradition began to dance, awkwardly but beautifully. Historians now look back on the 20th century as the century that mechanized memory. It was an age when we outsourced feeling to machines, to screens, to things that didn't break. But faith, true faith, has always needed breaking. Every candle must melt, every flower must fade. That's how love proves itself real, through loss. The irony of our time is that we've never had more ways to remember, yet we've never remembered less. We take photos of altars we don't pray at. We buy crosses for walls we never look at. We preserve everything and accept meaning. The saints became symbols, and the symbols became products. The soul was left somewhere between the price tag and the packaging. But all ages, no matter how modern, reach their turning point. Ours has begun. A quiet revolution is rising from the compost heap of convenience. All over the world, people are rediscovering rituals of touch, texture, and impermanence. Gen Z. Creators host story nights of the dead, reading family letters by candlelight. Climate activists light biodegradable lanterns for lost species on All Souls' Day. The sacred, once buried under plastic, breathes again. Perhaps this is how it always was meant to be. The saints, after all, were never made of marble or resin. They were made of memory, of fragile acts of faith that lasted only as long as the flame. Maybe we needed to lose that fragility to understand its worth. Maybe that's why, even now, as the LEDs flicker in supermarkets and plastic roses bloom under sterile lights, some part of us still craves the sound of a match being struck in the dark. Faith is returning, not as a spectacle, but as a whisper. It's in the grandmother teaching her granddaughter how to melt wax without burning her fingers. It's in the boy who trades his phone flashlight for a real candle during Mass. It's in the mother who chooses marigolds that wilt rather than plastic ones that don't. This is the quiet rebellion, the resurrection of feeling. We once built cathedrals out of stone. Now we build them from memory. The candles may be smaller, the prayers quieter, but perhaps that is enough. Because in every act of real devotion, there is a defiance of modern emptiness, a small flame daring to live. And so, as we step into yet another All Saints' Day, or in a world of selfies and synthetic scents, it is worth asking, what do we want our light to mean? A decoration that never fades, or a gesture that burns bright and ends beautifully? Maybe we did bury the saints under plastic, but their light still finds its way home. Through cracked walls, through landfill dust, through our own distracted hearts. Because no matter how much the world changes, faith has always been about the same thing, lighting a candle even when the night feels endless. And perhaps that's what it means to be human, to keep lighting, to keep remembering, to keep burning, even when the wax runs out.